7:04, hello everybody. Tuesday, December the 4th, 7:04, Council Chambers, Center Road. And we begin with the call to order. If we could start with the adoption of the agenda, can I have a motion? Thank you, Fred. Jamie, thank you for seconding. Any changes to the agenda, of which I have several, but okay, some of this is repositioning for our valued guests so we can move them to the front of the agenda, because some of them have sat through many long meetings before. So I think if I've got this right, I will start. I'm going to go all over the place, Shauna. So on page 2, which is Mayor B1, I have a second bullet point, which is called verbal reports. And then on page 3 of 124, and these are committee reports. The top one is number 2, which is infrastructure. If we could add number 3, which is Beach Park Advisory Committee, verbal. If we could then roll down to new business number 12. And this gets tricky here. So if we could move new business A over to Council 2, which is the Ocean Watch Task Force. So if we could make that number 3 then. Okay, I just know I'm going to screw this up when I get over here. Okay, so that means that new business number 12, the first one is B, which becomes A, discussion, re-volunteers week, and then it goes down. So it'd be A, discussion, B, citizens, C, PAC, D, historical SOC. If we could move F, which is review of council policies, to be item number 5 on the agenda after the public delegation. Okay, so that eliminates F from that piece. And if we could add, I've got this right, A, B, C, D. I think I'm left with number E. If we could bring up the new topic, Mayor's Levy. And number F, 2019 BC Community Achievement Awards. And Peter, I blessedly do not have any more, but I'm going to need control here.
That all looks good to me. I don't have any additions or changes myself.
Good. Then I'll do the editorial to my colleagues especially. I can see we've got a lot of meaty items, so if you're speaking, let's get to the point. Be direct, be brief, or my hand signal will be the kiss of death. All right, thank you very much. So
just because I'm on the phone here, I just want to clarify. We talked about some business arising from the last meeting. Is that anywhere on the agenda?
Sorry, Norm. Thank you for bringing it up, because that little arrow that's right here at the top here was it. Norm, I believe you had something to add, and I think Peter knows what it is. So where would that be applicable, Peter?
Well, when we get to business arising, just speak up, Norm, and bring our attention to where in the minutes you'd like us to focus our attention and commence talking.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, so Norm, I've got it on my thing here too, is the big hands up. All right, so we're not going to go through all those changes because there's far too many. I'm going to muck it up anyhow. So, can I have a motion to accept the changes? All in favor? Thank you all. Good, go. Public participation. Ruth, you are up.
Hello. Good evening, Council. I will be here at the next meeting as a delegation to go into more detail, but I thought I would just come this evening to give a little bit brief background on the Howe Sound Community Forum, because I see it on the agenda. And Councillor Bain was at the Ocean Watch Task Force recently. We spoke about that. For those of you that may not have the history or familiarity with the Howe Sound Community Forum, we have former Mayor Broughton. That was one of the original members that actually was initiated the House, I think, part of initiating the Howe Sound Community Forum back in year 2000. And every year since then, there has been almost twice a year gathering of the members that signed on to the Principles for Cooperation. The last 4 or 5 years, I've reinvigorated those as a citizen, as a volunteer. Now in my role as lead of the Howe Sound Biosphere Region Initiative, this is an example of one of the purposes or activities of the Howe Sound Biosphere Region is the dialogue, consensus building, and the opportunity to network with First Nations in the region and other elected officials, NGOs, and so on. Just for a bit of background, Lions Bay has hosted, so part of the agreement and the Principles for Cooperation is that it would move around the Sound. So Lions Bay has hosted over all those years 3 Howe Sound Community Forums. The last one most recently in May 2017. The cost to Lions Bay was $1,000. Up to 70 people attend. Because I keep track of who's hosted, I'm not going to be coming to Lions Bay and seeing if you want to host anytime soon, because it's other communities' turns. So I just wanted to mention that. If you do wish to host, though, any other types of Howe Sound forums or meetings, then that's most welcome. That's all I wanted to say now. I'll be back next week with more if you have any questions.
Perfect. I hope you'll stay for a second, because there are 2 things. One was the hosting Howe Sound. Whether you wanted us to put a place mark, maybe not in the next year, but in the next 2 years, don't know.
Well, I was just mentioning, if you would like to, it's always great to know we have Lions Bay as a backup, but I just wanted to let you know that Lions Bay's done more than its share of hosting.
Shall we leave it with you then on that piece? Thank you. Council, any questions? Good. And Ruth, you'll hang around for just a little bit, because we've also got the Ocean Watch Task Force.
Yeah, I did talk to
okay, so that's going to come up a bit. So, and any other public participation?
Yeah, Brenda and Michael both.
Oh, thank you.
I'm not normally here, and I didn't expect to be in the village tonight. I'm normally at a grandchild's piano lesson, which wonderfully ended up earlier. So first of all, it's a privilege to come before you, Mayor and Council, in a chamber that I began as a council member myself in. So it's a really nice full circle here. It looks great, and this domain is very welcoming. I'm here, though, to discuss my hope that Council will rescind the motion to go forward with a 70-kilometer, to support a 70-kilometer speed limit change. And I certainly can keep to the province, and I'm willing to. But this has been negotiated through 8 years of negotiation with sound engineers at the table. What happened as a side table to that main table of the Highway Advisory Committee that I served on as chair for about 6 years and served for 3 years, I guess it went about 12 years. About 12 years, beginning with Douglas Miller, moving to Mayor Max Wyman, and then myself. I served under Max Wyman and served as chair. The negotiations were very serious, intense, and people like Jeff Freer, who headed the Gateway Project, was at that table, Rob Ahola, and representing the Ministry of Transportation and Highways. A side table to that, one that we were privy to knowing about, but not privy to the negotiations, were the negotiations with the Panorama neighborhood. And those negotiations were based on a 60-kilometer speed limit. Now, when I approached the ministry about their desire to reopen negotiations with the Panorama Group, I'm sure that there won't be a desire to do that. And the speed limit, the change in the removal, if I can just be indulgent for a second, I'll try and speed up. The removal of the landscaping apparently has affected the Kelvin Grove residents by increasing the speed limit, and they're very concerned about the noise increase that has occurred there. One of the thoughts that I had that I'd like to share with council is, while I served on council, and Councillor Abbott would certainly be familiar just where you live geographically, at the Bayview Road. And Bayview Road, since we've had a 60, not 80-kilometer entry to Lions Bay, Bayview Road's traffic has slowed down as well. And I believe that fundamentally people entering Lions Bay, they're entering at 60 rather than the pre-Sea to Sky upgrade of 80. And they're driving a different speed. They're driving the 40K within Lions Bay. So I asked that the motion be rescinded. It was negotiated as 60 kilometers per hour. It was a long-term negotiation that community members, about 12 community members, sat on, representing all neighborhoods in Lions Bay. And it is something that was not a campaign promise, that was an advertised campaign promise. And so it's come out of sort of no place at a time when all of the research is saying that higher speeds lead to more accidents and also more fatalities and more serious injury. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Brenda. Mike?
Thank you very much. Interesting that you are back in this room. I was actually an alderman in the village of Lions Bay many, many years ago, and this is the location of our council meetings. I just would like to reiterate a number of points that I raised at the final meeting of the last council regarding the proposed change to any speed limit through the village. And I served on the Highway Advisory Group. I was on the initial charter committee and served all the way through until it was disbanded through the 3 mayors. And one of the key issues that we had was a real concern about, of course, safety, but also sound mitigation. And there was a tremendous amount of time, research that went into sound mitigation, and the fact that sound isn't just an inconvenience, it's a real liability to our residents. It causes distress, it causes serious concerns, and that has all been documented. So the Highway Advisory Group very carefully negotiated the sound pavement, the sound walls, and the speed limit, and those were a package. And one of the concerns that I have is that, and I stated in the meeting that I attended I believe it was October, was the fact that the village is opening itself to, I believe, to liability to the residents who have been promised a certain standard of sound level. And if the village takes on the responsibility of changing the speed limit, encouraging the changing of the speed limit, that could cause a serious issue with some of our residents coming before or coming after council to be liable, and I believe we're exposing the village to a liability if this is pursued. So I would encourage you to rescind the motion to the previous council to increase the speed limit to 70 kilometers per hour. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. That's it. All right. Suspect we're going to have a bit of a discussion on this very shortly, so if we could all hold it till then. And that would bring us up to, that closes the public participation part of the agenda, so it's the public delegation, and Mr. Burr, you are up. And right after you are finished, we'll go right to Q&A, and actually the piece where it's the review of council policy of Highway 99, if that's fine.
That's fine, so you want me to stick around for that?
Yep.
Just to hear. Thanks for having me, it's good to be here. If I can direct your attention to your package, starting on page 7, you will see a graph which was produced as part of a study that the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure did for us. This data is drawn from Google Maps. It represents hundreds of thousands of data points of people traveling the highway, and it shows the actual speeds at various points on the highway, specifically at Brunswick Beach Road on the left, then Isleview Place, which is what Modi calls Lions Bay Avenue, and at the Calvin Grove Way exit. And the top dotted line is the actual 85th percentile speeds experienced on the highway at various points. So, for example, if you look at Brunswick Beach Road, the 85th percentile speed is around 95 kilometers an hour. What is the 85th percentile speed? This is the speed driven by 85% of travelers on a given stretch of road. It's a parameter that's used by highway engineers to determine what the average driver finds reasonable and prudent in standard conditions. This is the speed that most people drive at. They believe that it is the correct speed for a given piece of highway. As we'll see in a second or two, they're wrong. The speed that they're driving at is in fact too fast for the morphology, that it means the configuration, the slopes, bend radiuses, the sight lines, the cambers of the highway. But the reality is, people are driving 95 at Brunswick Beach. They slow down slightly until they get to Lions Bay Avenue, or Isleview Place as it says on the graph. And then they speed up significantly to close to 100 kilometers an hour. The red solid line at the bottom is the speed limit. So you can see that the highway speed limit was until very recently 90, and people were doing somewhere around that. They were doing highway speeds. Why? Because it looks like a highway. The highway through Lions Bay appears to be a freeway. It has on-ramps, it has sound walls, it has 2 lanes in both directions. It looks like a freeway. It is not. It is not designed as a freeway. It's not cambered. Sightlines are not freeway standard. On-ramp and off-ramp lengths are not freeway standard. So what people are actually doing is driving what they think is the correct speed, but find out, as we'll see in a second, that they're wrong. In fact, if you look at the bottom dotted line, the 15th percentile speed, that means the speed that everybody but 15%, or even the slowest, are driving above the speed limit. Nobody drives the speed limit. The speed limit is irrelevant. Typically, highway engineers want to see a speed limit that the 85th percentile will match. If that was the case here, the speed limit should be around 90 kilometers an hour. Clearly, that is too fast for safety reasons for our highway. Now, anecdotal evidence, we haven't seen studies yet. I believe Modi is planning to study, and I hope that Council really forces them to produce a new study that shows the effect of the change of 1.4 kilometers of highway barrier. In fact, contrary to what the previous speaker just said, it's nowhere near Calvin Grove. It's actually north of Lions Bay Avenue. It starts at the Alberta Creek overpass and goes just past Brunswick. Anecdotal evidence from the fire department says that they believe that the calls are down by 1/3 in that area. The evidence seems to indicate that the barrier has provided a better visual cue to slow down. You may remember that getting that barrier was a bit of a mission because they were very reluctant because of the non-standard shy distances. Shy distance is the distance between the paint line and the wall. It's not standard. It's supposed to be 90 centimeters. Our shy distances range from 30 centimeters to 60. But as it would seem to be the case, not only are fatalities way down, we've had 1 overtopping in the past since it came in until now, and about a dozen crashes into the barrier, but no fatalities. And we'll get into that in a second. So we may need to refer back to this graph, but let me emphasize that The speed limit, the posted speed limit, is irrelevant in Lions Bay. Nobody is adhering to it. Why? Because the road looks like a freeway. So if we go now to page 8 and 9, these are actual accident statistics since the highway changed, after the highway upgrade, through the latest data that I had at the time, which was December 2016. The first graph is what they call PDO, property damage only accidents. And you can see by the size of the triangle, this very small triangle represents 1 or 2, the medium triangle represents 3 or 4, and a large triangle 5 or 6 incidents within a 200-meter stretch. If you look at the PDOs, you can see it in the blow-up that there's a massive concentration of PDO accidents right around Lions Bay, between Brunswick and Calvin. Similarly for injury accidents, these are accidents that mess with people's lives, from fairly minor injury, but yet an injury, all the way up to, but not including fatalities. You can see the accidents are well spread out beyond Lions Bay, but within Lions Bay, because of the need to have a fairly short bend radiuses, short on and off ramp lengths, simply because of the layout of the village when they did the highway, we experienced way more than our fair share of accidents. And finally, the worst of all is the fatalities. If you look at the next graph on page 9, if you look at the entire stretch from Horseshoe Bay to Britannia Beach, you can see that we have 7 of 10 fatalities. Many of them concentrated right around Lions Bay Avenue. So the table below shows what that actually means. Again, this is from January 2010, once the new highway opened, through December 16. Modi doesn't, this data is actually quite hard to massage because they bring in police and ICBC data, but this is what we have. So what I'm calling the Lions Bay sector is a 6-kilometer stretch compared to the Lions Bay Fire Rescue Service area, which is from mile marker 0.3, which is at Eagle Ridge Drive, exit 2, up to Furry Creek Hill. Now that has changed, in the interest of full disclosure, that has changed now with the advent of the Britannia Beach Fire Department. Our fire department only now goes to the top of the far Port Oco Hill. Be that as it may, you see the distance through Lions Bay represents 6%, sorry, I beg your pardon, 21% of the distance. We experienced 70% of the fatalities in that area, 50 and 49% of injuries, and 48% of PDOs, property damage only. Way more than our fair share. Why? People are driving too fast. So that's the first aspect of the speeds through Lions Bay. The speed limits are not working. People are driving too fast and finding out too late that they're driving too fast and crashing. Now you'll hear all kinds of anecdotal claims that I know how to drive in the freeway, I'm never going to crash. Somebody's crashing at twice the rate that they should be, and the fatalities are 3 times the rate. Something needs to be done. The speed limits are not working, they're doing 90, somewhere between 90 and 110 through Lions Bay. So I say that in several ways. It goes on and on to really drive home the point that the speed limit is not working. Not only is nobody doing 60, they're not doing 70, they're not even doing 90. They're doing some other speed limit. And I'm not talking about crazy people, I'm talking about the 85th percentile. The vast majority of people believing that to be the safe speed. Beyond accidents, there's 2 other whammies. The first is the noise. It's not the noise of tires and car engines, because those are well handled by the quiet pavement, by the sound walls. It's the noise of motorbikes, which go through here at speeds that I observe with my inexpert eye, anywhere between 90 and 160. Why? Because it's very famous in the motorcycle law, Lions Bay chicane. If you do 160 through the Lions Bay chicane, which is our bends, you can really lay your bike down if you're doing 160. And so that's what they do. On all fine days, if you live close to the highway, you will hear the whine of motorbikes. The problem is, you don't know when the next one's coming. It could be 10 seconds away, it could be 5 minutes away. It is driving people insane. I had people crying on my shoulder, literally, I don't mean figuratively. They cannot go outside their own house in the summer. And now, it's not even the summer. Today, I walked the dog on the Centennial Trail, motorbikes going through just before sundown, because it's a clear day, dry highway. The noise was debilitating. We have to do something about it, and the speed limit's not working. So what was the solution that the previous council endorsed? That was average speed over distance. This is not about that. What I'm here to ask you to do is to leave the motion that we put in place, which was done for very good reasons, to increase the 60 to 70, because I believe that will give people a more believable limit. Clearly, nobody, not even the grannies, are doing 60. They may do 70. We don't know, but it's worth a try, because 60 is not working. My belief is that 70 will be more adhered to by a few more people than 60 is, so that the aggregate will actually be slightly slower traffic. Will that help the noise? No, because that's motorbikes and they don't have any respect for any speed limit. They want to do 160 through here. And if they can't do 160 because of traffic, they will turn around and come back, and I've seen them do this. Because they want to come through here, it's okay. The road was laid out that way. We considered all sorts of things in previous council. Traffic lights, speed bumps, music pavements, which is you put special kind of tar on in a certain way that plays a tune if you're driving the right speed. If you're driving in the wrong speed, it's just a hum. I wouldn't suggest we do that one. There's one other whammy that impacts us to a certain extent for our people when they're trying to get south and trying to get north, depending on where they want to go, and there's an accident. Because there's no way out, sometimes the stoppage is 10 hours. The longest I've experienced is 12 at the big Orange Bridge. How am I doing on time there, Fred?
I'm sorry, but the battery died.
Oh, good. So about 3 or 4 minutes so far. Good, thank you.
I think you're pretty close to your town.
Okay. So I will re-emphasize the posted speed limit that we have today, 60 through Lions Bay, is having little to no effect. And as an experiment, the thinking was to try 70 to see if more people believed it than believed 60. Why? Because it looks like a freeway. The speed limit on freeways is 90. And you all know that when you're doing your 70 to 80 through Lions Bay, people are whipping by you at 100 because that looks right. And then they crash. So just a few more points here. I'm not going to go through the things that Lions Bay has done. This is the bottom slide on page 11 of your package. But we've done quite a lot. The most recent change was the sign, you may have seen it, residential area, please, in cursive, reduce vehicle noise. That was the best Modi could do to the wording that we had asked for, which was a little more emphatic. I will just point out that we have an unusual situation here. We have a provincial highway going through the middle of the town without the usual design parameters. Further setbacks, higher walls. This is a provincial freeway right through the middle of our town. There's no stoplights like there are in Whistler or Gibsons or wherever the other provincial highways are. We are in quite, I think, perhaps even unique situation. So I summarize my justification for asking for replacing the 60 with the 70. There's several. It's been technically approved by the Chief Engineer of the Ministry of Transport. This was after an exhaustive study of the safety aspects of all radiuses, sight lines, and ramp lengths. As I've said several times, I'll just re-emphasize it. The reason is, the thinking was, this may offer a more believable limit than the current limit, and that more people might adhere to it. It certainly will reduce the noise from deceleration, engine braking, and the rest, because there's one less speed change for those that obey it. And the final point is that it offers a lead-in to the average speed over distance project that we're trying to get the Ministry of Highways and the Solicitor General interested in. As you know, UBCM endorsed our motion to introduce average speed over distance. One step remains, which is to the Minister Farnworth wants to see some sort of public buy-in, and so the thinking between Squamish and Lions Bay has been that we would conduct a survey to demonstrate that. Central to average speed over distance working is a 70 km/h speed limit. We are not going to persuade anybody to put average speed over distance over a distance of somewhere between 4 to 6 kilometers at 60. 70 is the lowest they will contemplate. I'm not going to go through what average speed over distance is, except to ask you to look at why we would want it, and that is on page 15, the top slide of your package. The most important is excellent compliance. Everybody does it. And in your package, you will see results from Scotland. You can see where they introduced average speed over distance, and you can see that all but about 5% of traffic actually drives the speed limit. Why? Because you are guaranteed a ticket. It's not a maybe. It's not a gotcha like speed cameras. You know you will get a ticket, so you may as well drive the speed limit. And everybody does. And in Scotland, they believe that the people who are not driving the speed limit are tourists who don't understand. Now, we have tourists of our own. The Ministry of Transport already understands a lot about this and know that signage is everything. So with that, I think I'll wrap it up and request on a very good technical understanding from the Ministry of Transport Chief Engineer, who's now signed off on the change. And the same motivation that others are asking for, which is to reduce noise and reduce accidents by slowing traffic counterintuitively by increasing the speed limit by 10 kilometers. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Carl. Yes?
May I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Please.
Mr. Burr, on page 16 of your materials, is the FAQ section. I just want to highlight one of the FAQs, that's number 6, which says speed is not the problem, it's speed differential / overtaking / too fast on corners. And then the next box is, in addition to speed control, ASOD offers more uniform speeds. There's no need to overtake if everyone is at the limit. Is that essentially the basis of the argument? Is that more or less what it comes down to?
Yeah, I mean, that is an ancillary benefit because people are going to drive the limit or slower, but typically the limit is set at about as slow as people want to go. So in this case, it would be 70. That seems to be the technical limit of the highway. The idea is that everybody's doing it. There's no need, there's no frustration. One of the big challenges in any transit regime is unpredictability of journey times. And that's where you start getting accidents, because people, they didn't plan their time right, and now it's slower than they had thought, and so they need to get somewhere, and so they start driving dangerously. If you know that the average speed in a given stretch of highway, and I'm not sure how Modi would implement ASOD. Would they do it 5 kilometers through Lions Bay? Would they do 30 kilometers from Britannia to Horseshoe Bay? I don't know. That's for the techies to worry about. But the point is that in an ASOD stretch, everybody's doing the same speed. So it has the extra benefit. This is why Squamish is so interested in it. It increases highway capacity.
Can I ask one follow-up? Just in respect of, you made the comment that ASOD would not be practical or stand any chance of implementation if the speed is 60 instead of 70. What makes you say that?
That's a good point. That is speculative on my part from having read a lot of literature on ASOD implementations elsewhere. They actually want to increase the speed. So the idea is to put in place a realistic limit that people want to drive.
Which goes to the consistency argument.
Precisely.
I see.
So that would have to be modeled, and the vendor would do that in concert with the engineering department of the Ministry of Transport, I assume, and they would model the correct speed. We already know what it is. The chief engineer of Modi has done it for us. It's 70 through Lions Bay. No faster and no slower. Now, of course, we could make the speed limit 30, but nobody would do it.
Peter? Anything else? All right, to my colleagues then.
I'll just stand here until
If that's fine, until I looking at you. Okay, thanks. To my colleagues, this is a weighty thing, and I guess my comment here is we've received a number of delegations, and you know, as with all council work, there's no immediacy for a decision today, this minute, the next 20 minutes. I think if you prefer to make a comment, ask some questions, and you prefer to reflect till the next meeting, that's fine with me too. You know, I'm just giving choices here, especially for our two new councillors that, you know, lucky you guys, the first one up to bat, that it's not a bunt here, it's we're swinging. So I think on that one, we'll give the two new councillors a second to regroup, and we'll, Fred, if you've got any questions, or do you have a preferred direction that this go? And then I'm going to go to Norm in a second.
I can hold my comments until we talk about the review of the council policy.
I would intertwine them as of now. I think this is page 123, I think.
Okay.
We're just going to merge them together.
Okay, I'll sit down until you call me up, okay?
Okay, thank you.
I've got a number of thoughts on the thing, hearing both sides of the argument and whatnot, and also the experience of driving under varying conditions and varying drivers, and also living on Bayview Road, where we're right at Alberta Creek, where there is no sound barrier protecting the sound coming up. We feel the full brunt of the noise. And it is, there is a fair amount of tire noise, for one thing. And from the time the new highway was put in with this silent pavement, our experience is that the silent pavement is not. We don't hear any decrease in decibels at our house. We just hear a lower tone, but the volume is the same. So it's, I don't know, so I don't put too much stock in that. To the point about the engines revving, yeah, we hear them. And Sunday afternoons can be quite annoying, but neither my wife nor I go to sleep at night crying our eyes out over it. It's just, that's the way it is, and we choose to live there. I'm sorry for the people who find it distressing, but well, I found other things are more distressing, quite frankly, if I could just leave it at that. Now, as far as the speed is concerned, the speed associated with high engine revs is definitely a lot noisier than anything. To Carl's point, yeah, the motorcycles make a racket, and when they start hitting 10, 11,000 RPM, it is loud. And I don't think anything we do here is going to change that. I think this is an issue of enforcement. So I like the idea of the ASOD because it's a doable method of enforcing the law, whatever the speed is. And if we can get people to understand you want to go fast, you're going to pay for it, and they'll slow down more with that way. I know with police, handheld radar, they have to maintain a line of sight from the time they tag somebody for speeding to the time they pull them over. If they lose line of sight, it's difficult to get a conviction in court if somebody should fight it. ASOD eliminates that problem because you've got a start and a finish, and the system identifies the vehicle. I think it's an excellent system that way, or as best as I understand it. I think ASOD is probably our best bet in controlling the noise. The speed through Lions Bay, whatever you put the speed at, if they're going to violate it, they're going to get ticketed. So I'm not sure raising it to 70 is going to solve anything. It might be a more believable speed, but for those that like to do 100 and whatever through here, they don't care what our speed is. They're going to do it anyhow. So I don't know. I guess, okay, my big points are ASOD's the way to go, which we should put all our weight into. Whether it's 60 or 70 makes very little difference to me because I don't see the difference from where we sit at our house. When I come into town, we've got a car now that I can just flick a switch and it'll hit the proper speed limit and maintain our car at that speed. And I've been doing it at 60 for the last few months. And I don't get a huge lineup of cars behind me like we used to. For some reason or other, our highway is getting more popular, and people are starting to pay attention, and I think back that up with good enforcement. we may see some benefits. I do notice when you get into the open area, the speeds are quick, but I'm finding with being in amongst the traffic, we're not passed as fast as we used to be either. So again, I think speed in general on this highway are down a bit. But as soon as Whistler opens, I think we're going to see them go through the roof again, and we need to be prepared for that. But anyhow, so as far as the speed, 60 or 70, I'm undecided. I'm happy going with the majority because I don't see that it's going to make much difference one way or the other. And ASOD is probably our best hope.
Okay. Thank you, Fred. Norm? Your
Yeah,
thought?
I just have a few comments. On page 9 of the delegation's presentation, it's quoting a bunch of different countries that use ASOD elsewhere. Belgium, the UK, South Africa, and Australia also have enforceable speed cameras. So I'm not sure if that confounds the results or what that speaks to, but they also have a more effective means of enforcement. So for me, the question is, why aren't we focusing more on enforcement and less on accommodating people that want to speed? In general terms, I think we should not be increasing the speed limit from 60 to 70 through the village. I think it should be slower, because if you give people just a little bit of room, they take more. So I think the message should be that throughout the village of Lions Bay, we want everyone to slow down. I'm not sure what the hurdle is to camera enforcement in Canada, but the technology is there, and it's done elsewhere throughout the world. So I don't know if that's more of a flag we should be waving, is why is it that we're not able to enforce speed cameras the way they are able to in other countries? So it's a simple message. I think we should focus on enforcement and keeping the speed slow. I don't think we should be pandering towards increasing the speed limit throughout the village.
Thank you, Norm. Which of the two rookies would like to go first?
So you know, I've been to one more meeting.
Let's see. Let's start. Let's start with. Let's begin with the letter A.
Okay. I don't really want to repeat a lot of what was said by Norman and Fred. I do agree with every speed over distance. Sounds like a very good idea. Not sure how it works, as in what the distance is, because I think that's key to the whole thing. If the distance is between here and Squamish, I don't see how it affects the speed right through the village. If it's policeable over 3 kilometres on either side of the village, then I guess there's some argument to have a sort of 8 speed through the village as well that's somewhere compatible. So unless we understand that, I don't think the discussion about what speed we should speed limit both through the village makes any sense. Because if it is meant to be to facilitate average speed over distance, we need to know what the distance is, otherwise it just doesn't seem to add up mathematically. As to the noise issues, and I do just want to talk about the rumble of tyres on the road, which I know is what everyone's saying is not an issue. One of the people who were on the original highway committee pointed out to me that there was an agreement that that road would be repaved, and they said every 5 years. I take it as third-hand information, I don't know how accurate that is. So I was thinking when I was driving in, has it got noisier? And maybe it's just because we become used to it. I do recall the first time I drove that highway after that, a marked difference when you hit the quiet pavement, and I don't notice it anymore. So maybe that's something someone should go look into and see if there is a difference. I live at the very top of the village, and so I don't hear most of the noise. You can get further away from the highway than I do, but I can hear a screaming motorbike. So, and those are clearly the issues that I'm assuming affect most people most. Change the speed to 60 to 70, unless it has some clear connection to average speed over distance. I don't see any point in changing it. I would go with leave it as it is, because Carl mentioned it was counterintuitive. I'm an intuitive person, unfortunately. And it's a bit of an experiment is what has been suggested, so unless we feel we need to go do an experiment, I would say I see no reason to change it now. Yeah.
Sorry, Nipple, you were in favor of let's call it a test or something like that?
No, I'm not saying I'm necessarily.
Well, you would consider one? Maybe I heard that wrong.
Well, I was suggesting if we thought there was a reason to go do an experiment, sure, but then it's going to be a timed experiment, right? And I mean, it has to be, okay, we're going to do an experiment for whatever reasonable time we can measure, it is a month, and then we go back to where it was until someone analyzes and decides what we need to do. Not just, well, let's call it an experiment and leave it open-ended. So, and I don't know how achievable that is.
Okay.
But once again, I understand the reason to do it is it somehow facilitates the overall speed slowing down the average speed over distance. And I don't see how, other than, and I agree with the policing comments, if we could, that would be the way to get it done.
So if I could editorialize, I think everybody's in agreement with enforcement, but your preference would be to maintain the speed limits as they are.
Correct.
Thank you. Jamie?
I would say I have to agree with that as well. Outside of the increase of the limit in order to incorporate the ASOD, if that was necessary in order to get this in, then I would be in favor of that. I think this is the way to go. I believe speed radar cameras were outlawed in BC. Is that not? So that's not an option. This seems to be the only viable option. But it doesn't make any sense to me that you would do it from Squamish to Lions Bay. I think it would have to be within the village parameters for it to be effective at all.
Now, are speed radar cameras outlawed? I thought that with the live police
no,
standing
radar,
there, yeah.
Yes, but photo radar.
Yeah, photo radar, that's a no. I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the mechanical conduit for that. Okay, so enforcement, yes. Maintain the speed as it is now.
Unless it was,
unless there's
this
evidence
was
or data
contingent
that's
on increasing to a speed limit, because I do agree that people are going to do what they're going to do regardless, and the really making them pay is probably the only way they're going to change their behavior.
Alrighty. And my view is that, I mean, the historical stuff where the speed was 90, people tooled down to 60 because they were just a hell of a great bunch of folks. And then zoomed up to 90, probably didn't occur, so it was unrealistic. The 80 is clearly it's a change. My thinking is that a pattern of 80, 70, 80 kind of means that somebody's kind of focused on this. In the bigger picture, the 60 to 70 in the village really doesn't do much for me unless it's backed up by the average speed over distance. That's the driver, because I actually don't believe people are, these are the same folks that do this every day. I mean, so, you know, where does your education come from? Is it looking at those signs? I don't think so. So I think it comes from enforcement of one way or another. So, you know, I guess the softer way would be if there was a compelling reason to do the 70, that worked with average speed over distance, but the same thing could be made about the 60. So I think our piece here is we have two calls. We can either make the decision now to go this, I mean, the enforcement I think we all agree with. It's either the 70 or the 60. If you'd like, we can park this and think about it some more. I don't know.
Well, I would like to confirm whether, as you said, Carl, that 70 is what the magic number is for the MODI to implement this. So maybe confirmation.
Well, with the chair's indulgence, the issue is that in order for ASOD to work, you do need a certain distance. The implementations run from 160 kilometers in remote areas where the speed limit is 140, all the way down to 3 kilometers in short stretches of road in England, where the speed limit is 30 miles an hour. The speed limit is still in miles an hour in England. So, is it necessary for ASOD? I don't know, but I do know that the very short distance that is currently 60 in Lions Bay would not be an attractive ASOD implementation pilot for the Ministry of Transport. If we want to actually cut noise, we're in competition with Malahat and the Coquihalla. That's where the two other pilots might go. We have a real need yesterday to reduce noise. I don't know enough about the technology, and I would defer to the technologists in any case, because they need to be brought into the concept. But from my understanding is that the 60 zone would be too short. So in order to make it a viable ASOT implementation, it would need to be 70 for about 6 kilometers. But again, that's not based on any vendor quotes or technical understanding. If Council saw its way clear, if Council has already endorsed ASOT, if Council was prepared to consider a change back to whatever the speed limit that the ASOT implementation people thought was the right speed limit, that might be good. But my concern there is that the public would then get confused, because we would go from, we've already had a confusing change from 90 to 80. Again, quite ill-advised, by the way. It hasn't changed the speed at all. And I think the speed studies that come out will show that. If anything, it's increased it. But the change from 60 to 70 later, or 60 to 70 now, would that help an ASOT interpretation? Don't know. As things stand today, don't confuse the two projects. The change to 70 is an experiment, because 60 ain't working.
Okay, thank you very much. So, to my
colleague, can I just make one more comment?
Please do, Norm.
Yeah, I'd like to, just because we keep sort of stating as fact that cameras are not legal or enforceable, but that is currently being discussed within the province. They're looking at rolling out speed cameras yet again. So I don't know why we're just dismissing this as a viable option for Lions Bay. I think enforceable cameras that issue tickets to people will generate results. So let's not lose sight of that.
If I could address that topic as well. So this obviously is a consideration. We don't want a reputation as a speed trap. Speed radar is a gotcha. It's usually done in a covert way. The police mentality is to catch you. ASOT is not that. ASOT is a safety measure. You know it's there. You know you will get a ticket if you exceed the speed, and you know you won't get a ticket. Speed cameras are a political hot potato, and they were dropped as a campaign province by Gordon Campbell. They're not illegal. No government can touch them. Now, I'll just remind you that the current government has reactivated red light cameras to act as so-called speed on green. So that is, in fact, a speed radar right there. So they watch you as you go through the intersection when it's green, and they're calculating your speed. And the legislation has just been changed, as in about 6 weeks ago, that you can get a ticket now through where there's a red light camera. So speed radar this is their way to do speed radar. When I was in the debate at UBCM, a lot of the debate was, this is speed radar. It's not. ASOT is something else completely. But again, I'm asking for a different consideration, and that is to contemplate a counterintuitive, yes, I understand that's difficult, change to potentially slow people down.
Good. Brenda, you're squirming there, but I'm going to hold you to 1 minute or less here.
Okay. First of all, I'm proud that people who I've been at conferences in Atlanta have said, you know, I slowed down Lions Bay, the word out in North America is you're going to get a ticket. But I want to say that the liability that the community would face is this, is that all of Panorama negotiated compensation packages based on 60 kilometers, and the people on not the veins on that side of the road, but the other side of the road, where they overlook the highway, negotiated compensation packages. That's the part that was the side table that we knew about, but we weren't privy to the one-on-ones. So all of those were signed contracts. Whether you have a new person in that home or a former person in that home, those contracts would need to be reopened, and the liability paid for the increase of the speed posted speed. So I caution you, I think that there's no reason to increase the speed, and with an ASAP, you do not, you know, as Britannia has 60, we have 60. The 60 kilometers would be included in ASAT, and I do agree with the councillors that pointed out the long ASAT gets meaningless for Lions Bay. Becomes meaningless for Lions Bay.
Okay, thank you. Peter, to the best of your knowledge, these panorama contracts are real?
I recall looking into that previously, and my understanding from what I read was that they did, I don't know about negotiation so much as settling for what the ministry was offering them, which didn't come close, in the opinion of those people, to covering the costs associated with noise mitigation that actually did something. But in terms of liability, I do distinguish the point that those are contracts between two other parties. They're third parties. That's the ministry and individual residents. It's not Lions Bay. We're not party to those contracts. We have nothing to do with the terms of those contracts, notwithstanding that we would have been actively negotiating for particular things, as you've drawn everyone's attention to. But I you know, I'm not offering a legal opinion or anything like that. I'm not a lawyer, but I think it's important to distinguish contractual relationships from the municipality's position, and I don't necessarily agree that we would be in a position of potential liability, but I don't know enough about the details surrounding those discussions or negotiations, and whether or not any liability could exist in terms of other principles of law. I can't offer an opinion on that. But in terms of contractual liability, no, I just don't see that. But I don't think that's real. I think that's a little bit of a red herring, insofar as the question of whether or not an increase of the speed of 10 kilometers an hour would result in an appreciable increase in noise level. So from what I've read, and not being an expert by any stretch of the imagination, and not knowing as much as many of the people who sat on those committees for 8 years and probably listened to all of that information, my understanding from what I have read is that I don't think that the increase in noise from tire traffic for a 10-kilometer increase would be an appreciable increase to the extent that people would notice any difference. I could be wrong in that, but that's, you know, I have had to read through all of the Hague minutes for other reasons, not associated with this conversation. So I have read a lot of the stuff, and do have an appreciation for the fine efforts that were made by councillors and mayors and other committee members, volunteers over the years. So my comments should not be taken in any way, shape, or form as being any criticism of the work that was done, or you know, I hope I'm not offending anybody with my comments in the conclusions that I have drawn.
Brenda, 30 seconds.
Yeah, if I could just add that the negotiations didn't happen with the neighbors until the negotiations were finalized at this table. So the village and the ministry had agreed to 60K. Then they took that negotiation to the, for the compensation negotiations. It is directly tied. While we weren't privy to those negotiations, it is directly tied to those negotiations. And I believe they would have a legitimate, and while they didn't feel satisfied with the amount, the amounts were in the tens of thousands of dollars per household. So just to give you an order of magnitude, they would have liked much more compensation, but that's the order of magnitude.
All right, let's do going on this one. To bring this to a decision, there's no resolution on the table, so in the spirit of cheering us in a direction, if I'm using page 123 as the template here, where I would like to go is seek a seconder. I'm not looking for discussion, but then the motion would come back to us next meeting, giving everybody one last chance at this before you make the call. Unless it's so vehemently and table pounding that you stop me in my tracks. So the motion would be that referencing page 123, that council request the CAO come back on the meeting of the 18th, I believe, with amended wording such that the speed throughout the village is 60 kilometers an hour. And that brings us to the point. So I will make that recommendation, hoping that there would be a seconder, and thank you, Neville. And if there is discussion, it would be very short, but if I could lead on that, the objective here is that Peter comes back with something and you get your final kick at the cat next meeting. I'll go in reverse. Jamie, you fine with that?
Yep.
Neville? Sure. Brad?
Can you read it once more, just for clarity?
Hmm?
Your motion?
I kind of faked it.
I haven't written it down yet.
Okay, the motion is that referencing page 123, which is the October 17th resolution that passed, is that direction is given to the CAO to come forward at the next meeting with an amended resolution reflecting that the speed within the village is 60 kilometers an hour.
Okay.
You've heard it now.
I have. Just one question. If the speed is tied to ASOD, would you want to make a condition on the 60 that if ASOD requires it, we move to 70, or is that too complicated at this time?
Well, in fact, I don't believe it's too complicated because you're reflecting what both Neville and Jamie had said. So that's for the CAO to twist his little magic in that one.
So are you, Councillor Bain, proposing an amendment to the initial resolution that was already seconded, that there be some caveat with respect to conditions that may be associated with ASOD?
Very well put. I like that. Thank you. Yes.
And so then I think you would need to ask council for a seconder on that amendment.
Thank you, Jamie. All right, any discussion?
On the amendment?
On the amendment? All in favor? Yes, thank you.
Okay, back to the main motion. Main motion as amended would be that the CAO return on the 18th with a proposed resolution amending the speed limit, the previous resolution, down to 60, subject to any conditions that may apply to ASOD being reliant on a speed limit of 70, or words to that effect.
All right, so and to my colleagues, thank you. That closes this piece of this. Norm?
So you've got a call for a vote on that amended
Yes,
resolution.
I thought I did. Norm, you still there?
I'm there, yeah.
Good, okay, we're going to call for the motion on the amendment. So all in favor? Passed. I'm taking that as a yes, Norm?
Yeah.
Good. All right, thank you very much. And so my colleagues, for the next meeting, do think about what you've heard and come back ready to vote. All right. Hard to believe we're only at approval of the past minutes, but yes, we are. Can I have, okay, a motion to review the minutes? Thank you. Neville, second. Perfect. Good. Commentary on the minutes? I have none. And Norm, you should be getting warmed up for your piece in a second.
Okay, well, yeah, should be quick.
Okay.
I have no scrolling.
No favor? Jamie? Good. Brad? Okay, all in favor of the minutes as they stand? Thank you. All in favor? Good. Thank you. Business arising from the minutes, and Norm, you asked to speak on this.
Yeah, so if we could just quickly look at page, I think it's 28. We had some correspondence from Carolyn Conlon with respect to the conflict of interest associated with the October 16th vote, the Ward Millennia Architecture, roughly $3,000 worth of work to lay out the parking lot. Now, we agreed that there was no further response required. However, shortly after that meeting, Neville and I had a conversation which led me to believe that perhaps this issue is not fully resolved. So I'm going to have to lean on Councillor Abbott to kind of clarify what his concerns were with regard to that vote. So my understanding was there were some issues around insufficient discussion. So I just wanted to clarify that, and I need some reflection from staff on whether we handled that vote properly or whether it was not handled properly.
Am I asked to say, was I being asked to say something? Explain.
I think he sought some input from yourself, or Norm, were you seeking input from Councillor Abbott or from myself?
So both. I want to make sure I understood Councillor Abbott. I was not sure if that vote was still an issue that was open, and whether it was unresolved, and then I also need guidance from council on whether they feel that that vote was handled properly, or if we could have handled it differently.
Okay, I'll try explain the conversation that I had with Norm. First by saying that the conversation and the concern has nothing to do with the conflict of interest. The point I made was in the previous meeting, when the decision was made, there was significant discussion about the matter, about the budget, where it was coming from. There was a suggestion from someone, could have been the ex-mayor or the CEO, about do we need this, do we just need to paint lines. There was a lot of discussion about the merit of doing the work, regardless of who it went to or did we need it. In the subsequent, and we all know because of the conflict issue that I raised, that now effectively didn't happen. In the subsequent discussion, there was none of that discussion. There seemed to be a focus in that meeting, and it was my question to Councillor Farmer, was where did you think you were voting around a conflict of interest, or did you realise you were actually talking about the merit of a contract to paint lines versus do we need to do this changes, do we need this contract? That was my question. Is that clear enough? You understand?
Yeah.
I'm not talking at all about the conflict of interest. It was the actual decision was made. In the second meeting, it did not get discussed, and it got voted on effectively by Jim and Norm, but without the benefits of the previous discussion, unless they went and listened to the audio of the meeting, of the previous meeting.
So the only, sorry.
And as far as I was concerned, the matter was over after I discussed it with Norm. I didn't realise this was coming up, but that was the conversation.
So the only thing that I would add is that the materials with respect to the work that had been put out and the request for proposals to do the work, that material was again a part of the subsequent meeting, notwithstanding there was little, if any, conversation about the merit of that work. There was probably more around that merit the first time round, I grant you. So the second time round, Councillor Barmeyer, for instance, would have had to have read the materials and understood the concept that was that we were voting, or the council was voting on that matter, and on the proposed letting of the contract for that work. I would note that previous to even the first October meeting, the matter had come up back in July, perhaps, when it was first raised by Mayor Burr. And Mayor Burr brought a report to council with a proposal to undertake this work, and a direction that staff seek proposals for someone qualified in order to do that work. Councillor Barmeyer, I believe, was part of those conversations, so was familiar with what was being proposed, and in fact had recommended and provided staff with the name of a potential consultant who would be capable of doing that work, who staff ultimately did follow up and have discussions with, and ultimately received an initial proposal which was eventually withdrawn. So I won't speak any further for Councillor Barmeyer, but I just offer that in the way of background in terms of his knowledge of what he was voting on. But I don't want to put words in your mouth, Councillor Barmeyer. I'll stop speaking now.
No, I just wanted to make sure that we understand that this decision didn't come overnight, and it had been something we had been talking about for months, and that the technical merit of having drawings to facilitate a cost-effective tender made sense. So, it's just one of those things where you got to look all the way back to the beginning of the conversation to get a picture of what that vote really meant. And I just wanted to set that straight.
All right then, Councillor Barmeyer, are we concluded on this to your satisfaction?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That closes business arising.
Just one thing, if I could.
Thank you.
Item 6A on the CN parking lot, not totally different than what was discussed. When I was reading through this, the comments, just Peter, if you can give a quick comment on it. The line, second line says, however, there have been disagreements with CN with respect to the draft legal agreement on the lease. I noted that requirements for environmental liability protection insurance is very expensive, so staff is looking at how to deal with the issue and is examining other options. And I was just wondering, shouldn't the environmental liability be covered by CN's insurance, because they're responsible for the lot, and their cargo at times could far exceed any automotive impact on the environment that parking lot would produce?
I'll let them know that you said that.
That's my opinion.
They basically, the terms that they're offering us are essentially, we take the lot as is, which means regardless of any environmental catastrophe that may have happened there 100 years ago when the rail was first built, is our responsibility if it exists. So they're making us take it as is, and to cover any potential environmental liability for such event, up to $10 million. We currently have coverage up to $2 million, which we think is adequate and which already is very expensive. Coverage up to $10 million would be essentially double what we pay now on an annual basis. So we're looking at ways in which we can address that to convince CN that $10 million of liability coverage is not required, that $2 million would be adequate. And one of those ways would be for us to do a baseline assessment of the current state of the lands. So we have been researching that a bit and getting some quotes, and we're trying to find the least expensive method for doing that. And that's sort of where we're at in terms of, we sort of put the the lease discussions and negotiations on hold while we're exploring these alternative means to support our argument that we don't need this 10 million liability insurance.
Thanks.
Good luck. Good. Thank you. Okay, that section's concluded. We'll go to unfinished business. And inside the box, it says Peter. Yeah, Peter hasn't done anything with the first one, and if we can push that off to the new year, it's because nothing's going to happen with it in December, I can assure you. Fun?
The next one, I have preliminary good news. It appears that the District of North Vancouver is going to take over the function of the dispute adjudication registry. That is sort of the preliminary information I've received from their bylaw department, but nothing official at this point. But a little bit of weight has been removed, and we'll follow up.
Well, even if you're making it up, it's good news. Thank you.
And the final one, I'm a bad boy because I went on holiday without sending that letter.
All right, shame on you. All right, thank you. That concludes that. Staff reports. Everybody loves a good year-end report. And before I do, let me look at my notes here. Reports. Yes. I can happily tell those, especially the new staff and the folks in attendance. Seems like just yesterday, but when I was a first-month counselor in my first term, the controller explained the village cash flow to me by moving a series of colored eggs around an egg crate. And I said, thank you, but I could use the financial statements. And they said, we don't do them. So we've come a long way, and from that, and in no small part to the different folks in the chair, but most recently Pam, who, to put this in perspective, she's given us virtually a year-end, and her information is 4 days old, when most public accounting standards for public companies should be 45 days. So kudos to you, Pam, for the outstanding job, and very timely, and the depth of the report. And to you.
So, as Mayor McLaughlin has stated, normally this would be a third quarter review, so it would be the results to the end of September, and I would normally present that the first week of November, but just with the change in council and the initial meeting, it was delayed. So I did the results up to November 30th. That's a bit of a misnomer though, because it's just basically everything we paid until November 30th, so that actually would not include November invoices because we wouldn't have received them yet. So we're missing about 2 months worth of expenses. The payroll's in there until pay period 24. So even though it's a bit odd looking at it as this date, it's a bit of a mishmash, I did want to make it most current so that it would be most up to date. So essentially, the quarterly reviews, I do a summary and then we look at each department and I do an analysis of the department. So our approach in the past has been to put it out in the council package, and then if anybody has any questions, but we have new council now, and I don't know if you wanted to take a different approach and go through it page by page. I don't know what you would prefer.
I'll defer to my colleagues. I don't know how active you want to be in this, Norm. We can listen to you in just a second, but my overview would be to my council member colleagues. We're going to be seeing a lot of this in the next 2 months. So, Pam can quickly run through the pages. I'm looking at the clock. I don't want to be here till midnight tonight, but odds are looking like good. So, thank you. So I'm not going to quell any conversation here, but this is the time we can go through it quickly or not.
I'm content with that.
Pardon?
I'm content with that.
Content with that? So, thank you. Neville, you could want to shoot your hand up if something really spurs you?
I'll scribble a few notes and maybe I'll just fire a couple of quick thoughts, but I don't see a need to go through it page by page.
Okay.
Why don't you, okay, so are you going to ask your questions?
You want to go first?
Or do you want to go through it? I mean, I've gone through the thing, I recognize the work, and as I said, we're going to see it virtually every second week for the next 6 weeks.
Once the budget starts.
So, I mean, which would you prefer, Neville, to go direct to your questions or have Pam go through it?
It's just up to me. I'll just fire a few
Sure.
questions.
Okay.
If everyone else is up to it. Just trying to basically trying to get myself up to speed.
If you could call the page number and where you're looking.
Okay, yeah, so I'm starting on page 35 of 124.
Okay.
So I guess what I just heard is I'm excited about the $868,000 deficit, but it's a little bit less than that. Sorry, surplus, but it's a little bit less than that, which sounds good. The water fund one seemed to have a big discrepancy in salaries. Is that
Yes.
positions not filled or less overtime or?
No, what it is, and that's sort of what I tried to describe, maybe a little too succinctly. What I look at with the salaries, we budget all of the public works salaries, and then we allocate it.
Sorry, this is just behind 2 months, is it?
No, no.
Okay.
What it is we basically say we're very, very accurate as to what the salaries are in total for public works, but public works works on water, sewer, parks, and on public works. So we, based on historical, we allocate a percentage of those salaries to each department. So that's what I meant by my final comment, where overall we're tracking on budget with salaries, but parks is over and water is under and sewer is under. And we do our best to try and allocate it, but we find the best way is just to look at overall how we're doing, because things come up sometimes, we just have to work more in parks and less in water, and we never seem to get it quite right. Like at the end of the year, where the budget is total, we tax for the right amount, we just don't always allocate it. Because it's really, oh yeah.
We did spend a little less time on the water side because we had a couple of construction projects going on at Harvey Creek that negated our staff's inspection of the intakes for a month or so.
So overall the salaries are good, but yes, it does look kind of funny when you look at the individual departments. It's looking like we're under, but we are going to finish the year slightly favorable because for that very point you made, we had in the budget to hire a public works person effective July 1st, but just with the process, we didn't hire them until November, so there is some savings there.
Okay. So obviously you are looking through it, you get to see the big difference between budget. And
Yes.
the actual is going to be the sale of the land that didn't happen, and
Yes.
the grant we didn't get.
Yeah.
That
That's
shows that
huge.
big discrepancy, obviously. Transfer to reserves, got 1.1. This is not actually a forecast then, right? Because it will be less once you actualize.
Yes.
Or accrue the salaries and stuff that's not in
Yeah,
there.
basically from surplus down, that's a little difficult until year end. Like what I'm showing right now for transfer to reserves is just the gas tax funds that we've received, because that's actually a requirement that when we receive that money, it be transferred to a reserve.
Okay.
And the balance of the budget, the 2.5, that was the sale of the land. Once we sold the land and we took off our expenses, that money has to be transferred to a reserve.
Okay. How do I tell from this report, or I guess I don't, just a different report, what we actually have in reserve? Is that something?
That would be a separate thing, and I report on that at year end.
Okay.
Yes, because that is an important aspect, and that's a big part of the year end reporting.
Okay. To the question of gas tax, I think you explained that. Well, maybe someone could just tell me, what is the gas tax?
Basically, the gas tax is, all the municipalities get it. I believe it's based on population, and it's essentially an unrestricted reserve. It has to be used for capital, but we receive about $54,000 a year, and it's paid twice a year. And then, right now it's just going into reserve. We have close to $300,000 in a reserve now for that money because we haven't spent it yet.
So we use that on capital projects?
Capital projects, yes. And it's basically part of the revenue from the gas tax. And it's actually, when I say MDC, it's across Canada that it's delegated to municipalities.
Yeah, that's all my scribbles. Thanks very much.
Well, that was it?
Good, Fred?
Yeah.
I just got one.
Sure.
If I can find it. Oh, I found it right away. It is in the EOC. It's page 40 of 124. The issue comes up now and then about grants. And PSS is on paper as getting a grant paid when expenses are incurred, which seems to me that it's not really a grant then, it's actually ESS is
Reimbursed.
reimbursed.
Yes, we call it a grant because at the beginning of the year, the ESS will actually, they do a budget and they sort of give us an outline of what they hope to buy during the year and spend. And then we budget that, and then throughout the year as they buy those things, we reimburse them. So it's a little bit different from the municipal grants where the events committee will say, we're requesting $4,000 this year, and we cut them a check for $4,000. With ESS, they give us the same budget, but we just reimburse it as it's incurred. And
Just for clarity then, the ESS people are not required to apply for a grant application then?
no, they basically, they do give us the courtesy of giving like a budget, which we share with council, but it's not the actual municipal grant.
Yeah. It's just that they're a volunteer group that is working as almost unpaid staff, so I just think of them more as unpaid staff members.
Yes, I think that's why it's really just, actually, you're right, it is probably a misnomer to call it a grant. When we do this budget, they actually tell us what the budget should be, and it's sort of a request, this is what they hope to buy.
Right.
And then we just slot it in there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
That is a good note. Maybe, maybe we shouldn't call it a grant in the future.
Thanks.
Norm, any questions?
Nope.
We're good, thank you very much. Okay, and then if I can have a motion, recommendation that the report, the 2018 year-to-date review is received for information purposes. Thank you. Second, all in favor? Good, done, thank you.
No.
We don't take objections at this table, Jamie. Usually we draw swords then. Okay. If I can just kind of do this because this is kind of the next B and C here. So appointments to standing committees, the first is emergency planning. That's going to be dealt with in camera and come back here. In terms of the mayor's piece, I got 2 bits of information. One in terms of the furthering of the small communities which are in Metro are Anmore, Belcarra, and Bowen Island. I met with the mayors of Anmore and Belcarra today, and I think that will be a fruitful exchange. The mayor of Bowen will see on Friday at the Metro meeting, and hopefully he'll participate. Clearly the idea is to, steal each other's best ideas and make good things happen, and let's just leave it at that for the public consumption. The other piece, I think I'm pleased to tell you that the chair of Metro called me today in advance of the committee appointments, but he has asked me to be on the, I might be called the advisory board for the Spirit Pacific Regional Park as a representative for Metro, and then dear to Pam's heart, he's asked me to become a member of MFA, and which would be like being on their outside board.
Could you just
Yeah, I was
clarify
going to say what MFA
all
is.
acronyms, could we please just clarify them for me?
Oh,
I've been
Municipal
overloaded with
Finance
them.
Authority.
And that's who we do our borrowing. It's sort of like
Yeah.
our bank for the borrowing.
Okay,
Bank for
perfect, thank you.
all the municipalities and provinces. So that would be my piece of news. The piece that has council, unless somebody else speaks up, are the 2 pieces, which is the Beach Park Committee and the Curly Stewart Committee, which will come out of in camera, unless there's any other reports from council verbal. Seeing nothing, and Norm being quiet, we'll move on to, although she's left, which was the Ocean Watch Task Force representative.
Excuse me, sorry.
Okay, not to worry. We can continue. So, Peter, I think on this one, would you push me along a little farther here?
I think perhaps Councillor Bain might be able to help you first.
I don't know what Ruth was going to speak about.
Just with respect to the Ocean Watch Task Force, I spoke to her on the phone a little bit about the work that the task force has been doing and how it's set up, and elected officials from all of the municipalities and regional districts are welcome to attend and become informed about the work that the task force is doing. She talked a little bit about some of the some of the work that they have on their table or on their plate for the year ahead, and some interesting things. Don't have my notes, but Village Alliance Bay elected officials and myself perhaps as well might be interested in attending on occasion. But certainly the minutes of all those meetings are posted on their website, on the House on Community Forum website, and certainly all elected officials are encouraged to inform themselves and stay abreast of things that are happening in that forum, and to attend when they see things that are of interest. And
there we go, and we all get the invites, so I think we know what we're talking about.
One thing, if I could add, one of the people, a consultant named Susan Habs, was there, who is working on the thing that I can't remember. It's the document they're going to put out, similar to Tofino. The name skips my mind. Where they do of the whole house sound.
The mapping?
Well, it's more than that. It has all the impact of the physical environment and the human environment and business and everything. I'll remember about 3 o'clock in the morning. Anyhow, she's putting together sort of a bit of a presentation on how to explain the whole thing. And I mentioned to her that the volume of material that they have can't really be distributed in a council meeting if that's her intent. Then you got to pare it down to about 1.5 minutes if you can. And you can see the wheels turning in her. And she said, "Okay, but then I'll do this, 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 and this, and probably by next meeting we'll have such a product that we can have a report that probably won't take more than 1.5 minutes, and we'll hit all the high points."
Good.
A little out of order, but my mother-in-law just passed. That was the phone call I had to take. So I'm going to. All right?
Yep.
Okay. How are you feeling like this?
All right. Let's recess for 2 minutes. Okay. Peter, can you grab the so we've concluded the Ocean Watch Task Force commentary, and I think I had on my piece that we were pushing from new business the House on Community Forum discussion about hosting, which Ruth has answered after we put it there, and I think we'll just stand down on that unless there's any disagreement. So, good. Again, the next piece is appointments of representatives for the Sea to Sky invasive species and the North Shore substance abuse, which will be released when we come out of camera, which brings us to committees, which is D, Trees, Views, and Landscape Committee. I can read this. Everybody's had a chance to look at the pictures and read the commentary from. Yes?
Sorry to interrupt, Mayor McLaughlin. I just thought perhaps before you, I anticipated that you were going to read out the motion as written in the agenda, and I thought before you did that, perhaps I could add a word or two so that we don't have to amend it afterwards.
That would be fine. Why don't I defer to you for some commentary?
Okay. With respect to the application, it was, everything was in order. Staff were in agreement with all aspects of the application. 911?
No, it's the one where it's
53, yeah. Okay.
63. It's the perpetual, non-perpetual.
Ah, okay. Sorry, you were going to go here.
Well, I was going to give you the opportunity to make your comment because it was
Okay.
the only thing which is here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Maybe I should just let you run with this and And just keep my trap shut instead of interrupting the mayor.
Just saying. All right. Well, I was going to do the yin and yang thing here. That's fine. All right. Anyhow, so I think I know that I'll give the quick editorial on this. The pictures are there. The commentary is there. If I go to the second on, this is on page 2 of 124, which is the agenda page. The sentence that says that council reserves the right to amend or cancel the ongoing permit at any time. The tree committee opposed the view of staff, which is reflected on the top of page 63 of 124, which staff had suggested this be for a 3-year term. And the view of the tree committee was that they didn't want to see the residents coming back. The tree wasn't all that big a tree in the world of the world, so it's just on. And although, so to build in a safeguard, it was to amend or cancel the ongoing permit at any time. So basically, the view was approval of this recommendation is that these folks can cut their tree in perpetuity, trim it in perpetuity, which I now defer to the CAO for the counterpoint to this.
Yeah, I would advise against making any kind of a resolution which grants anyone a right in perpetuity. There's the law against perpetuities, for example, which is a statute that basically puts a limit of 21 years on things. But also, more to the point, one council cannot bind another council, so really any order that you make should not exceed the term of your council. So I was going to suggest that it be limited, that it could be repeated annually until October 15th, 2022, instead of in perpetuity. And then I would change the wording from ongoing permit to the term of the permit in terms of the right to amend or cancel it.
Okay, so your suggestion is to amend that, again, the penultimate sentence.
Would be to strike the words in perpetuity and to substitute therefore the words annually until October 15th, 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the following section to strike the words ongoing and substitute the words term of the. That's it.
Term. All right. I would put that motion forward with the amendments shown as the recommendation. And I have a, thank you, Jamie, second. Any further discussion on this? All in favor as amended? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Peter. Okay. I'd like to start rolling downhill quickly now, as I'm looking at the clock here. So Fred, you're next up on the infrastructure piece on the agenda, which is top page 3 of 124, recommendation for study into ocean view drainage improvement. I think Jamie's probably the only one that's not familiar with this, so a quick editorial and right to it.
Yeah, just sort of a quick bit on it is the drainage situation on Ocean View has been debated back and forth to try and figure out what's the best way for the area as a whole to cut down the amount of water going down Ocean View. There used to be a culvert from Ocean View to Rundle Creek. It's being blocked. And so the discussion around the table of the infrastructure committee was we have option A or B as we call it. Like, should we reestablish or encourage reestablishing the drainage path to Rundle, or maintain the current drainage path all the way down to lower Ocean View, and then take it all the way to Harvey Creek. All the text is here rather than me belaboring it. I presume you're going to look at it, or, yeah. Anyhow, so the infrastructure committee is just giving advice to council, which they think, and the recommendation is that council directs staff to commission the study to assess the resulting drainage flow scenarios for option A, option B, and to provide cost estimates for both options. Cost estimates for option A should include costs for both directional drilling and open trenching alternatives and the challenges associated with each. I think what the gist of it is for the infrastructure committee is, even though there's so many engineers on the thing and staff as well, we don't want to make a decision in the dark. It's better to spend a bit of money to find out what is the best situation or best solution, rather than take a guess at it like it was done many years ago and we've ended up with not such a good result.
And so I could just add the financial considerations. We believe it would cost about $8,000, and there is actually room in the Public Works budget. They're favorable in that line item. So 18. I think we could still cover it under the Public Works favorable variance, because that is the one account that is quite favorable in Public Works. So that's where the money would come from.
Thank you very much. And second,
stopping
and,
18.
and I and Peter, you were on the. I was there, so I know staff supports this recommendation.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, Peter?
Just in terms of the wording of the proposed resolution, it refers to option A and option B, and standing alone, that would be confusing to someone who doesn't know what option A and option B are. So after the word option A should be in brackets wording of option A, which is reestablish original drainage path to Rundle Creek, and then after option B should be in brackets maintain current drainage path all the way down to Lower Ocean View.
Oh, so I take it then our background isn't going to show up in the minutes then?
Well, it'll be an attachment.
Just
No,
for the recommendation.
reports are not attached to the minutes.
Okay.
So resolutions need to be
Clear.
able to stand on their own
Yeah.
for us.
Shauna, you've got that, or can you get that?
Yeah, I
Okay.
got it all.
All right, so, Fred, I'm sure you're going to put forward the recommendation that Peter's just modified.
Absolutely.
Norm, are you fine with that?
Yeah, no, I feel strongly about this. I'd like us to dig into this.
Good-o. You love the word digging. Jamie, you're fine?
Yeah,
Good.
absolutely.
We have first and second, all in favor? Done, thank you, carried. The next one is the Beach Park Advisory Committee, and I'll just give you the quick verbal. As you look at the very small gallery tonight, last night it was kind of like the opening of the P&E. It was a pretty full house, and it was a hungry crowd too. But I think out of this, there were two things. I would just talk about the one. The offshoot was that our staff showed an exceptional, their skill in providing the report and recommendation was obvious, and their stick handling through the to the interaction with our residents, and also the live screen with suggested changes to places with our photo show was outstanding. I think our committee members who aren't used to a large crowd, being a large crowd and vocal, did a good job. And I think ultimately our residents were very respectful and came through with a whole bunch of really good ideas. And I think when this council sees the plan, when it does pretty quickly, they are going to be pretty pleased with the results. And even though we've had well north of 150 people providing feedback, I would say that the 10 folks who were here were particularly granular with their feedback. So there is that I would advise, so that'll come forward. There's another thing that I will put on, because Neville is left, I'll put on email tomorrow, that it's more of a protocol for us when we mingle email addresses and things like that. So let's just leave that at that. Emergency services, there being none. Resolutions, there are none. Bylaws. How many times do we have to see this fee bylaw?
Every year.
Every year, 5 times a year. All right, this is third reading. And Pam, do you have any commentary on this one?
No.
Other than-
Basically, it hasn't changed since the first and second reading.
All right, so this is the third reading, so if you get to page where are you?
71.
Thank you.
Tab.
Just,
the bylaw tab.
If I could just really briefly run through this.
Yep.
On page 82 of 124, I just want to point out for the benefit of Councillor Cunliffe that,
Thank you.
so because you weren't here for the previous readings, so the highlighted portions indicate the changes that are being recommended and so far passed to the extent of 2 readings. So this is the consolidated version of the bylaw with the proposed changes, which is sort of the first few pages of this report
Yes.
at the amending bylaw. And this is what we get out of it. And then once this is passed, assuming it is, all the colored portions disappear and we're left with the final consolidated version. So if you had any questions about anything, it would be, I presume, in respect of any colored areas
no.
that. No questions?
I'm good.
So to speed this along, so I will make a recommendation that fees bylaw number 497, 2016 amendment bylaw number 554, 2018 be read a 3rd time. Motion, thank you. Second, thank you. Norm, I see you're nodding your head, thank you. Any discussion? Everybody loves a good fee discussion, don't you, Pam? I work my stand-up comedy in the off-season. All right, this is, for this group, one of our few final resolutions. There we go. So, reading for 3rd time, all in favor? Yes. Good. For adoption? Yes, we're all good. Thank you.
No, not adoption. Third time.
3rd time, oh, one more time, yes. Getting keen there.
One more time. December
We will
18th.
see it
Don't
one
pull a
more
card.
time.
Yeah, exactly.
No, we only see it once, but it comes 4 separate little installments. That's not once. Okay, Councillor Abbott is not here, so I will do the correspondence in 45 seconds. Okay, number 1, this is the outside one, and this is from Mr. Zhang, if I have his name properly, and it just missed the cutoff last time, and it is from Mr. Zhang, but references Mr. Liu, who's a realtor. Sir?
Hi.
Are you one of them?
Yes, I'm the first one.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you very much. So I think the request here is, as per the last line, please advise us on the next step that we can take to further progress this. Mr. Dion, this is going to come to you, so you can speak or just hand over a business card. Okay, well, we know where he is, so if you could contact Mr. Zhang tomorrow, and we'll start the ball rolling. Are you fine with that?
That's great.
Good, thank you. Sorry you missed the cutoff last time. Okay, next one is the RCMP, which is, this is the one, and Peter and I have also, there's that one that just came in this afternoon.
This is the invite to the
big show
strategy meeting that the RCMP will be doing on February 5th, and the other was
our tete-a-tetes.
Yeah, so quarterly, Mayor and CAO have been meeting with the RCMP inspector, Kara Triance, and a couple of her staff. And the next one we're going to tie in with this meeting was, I think, if that's going to work for you, Mayor.
Well, I wanted to make sure that we were, because I know it was this date or the other date,
right,
or another date. Do we usually go to this? I mean, this is...
we've never been invited to this before.
Thank you. All right, that's a no. Okay, next one up is page 100. This is from Mr. Sturdy. Congratulations all around. He, wishes to best support us wherever he can, get us that grant, and we'll be a happy bunch of campers. No response. The next one is from Selena Robinson. Yes, on a potpourri of things and guidance foundations and all that kind of good stuff. There's not a response requested, and I don't propose to give it. Moving on. Province of BC, and in particular David Eby and Mike Farnworth, and this is the cannabis-related stuff, of which is one of the many we seem to be getting every second day. This is a no response as well, Peter, unless you tell me otherwise.
Yeah.
Nope, nothing there. Moving along to page 111. And this is from Stephen Thatcher, our CMP. I think this is, I feel like I've seen this thing 5 times. This is no response. This one, the next one up, which is page 113 from Pam Goldsmith-Jones. This is a letter that we asked her to write on our behalf to Minister Donaldson to get our rural dividend fund application allowed, either temporarily or long-term, which would be more desired. So no response there, although I'm sure, for sure, but all of us will be invited to both Jordan Sturdy's and Pam Goldsmith-Jones' little Christmas thingy, whatever they do at Horseshoe Bay, which I've never gone to, but which I will be going to because we need to press the flesh. And you are all welcome, and it's a good opportunity. And so when I get it, I don't know how they're going to send it, just to me, or if I get it, then you're all going to get it. Okay, Auditor General, no response on that one. Okay, then we get into the inbound from the residents. And former Mayor Broughton has written extensively, and it's a topic dear to her heart, which she's mentioned again today. So I think it's fair to say no response on that one, that we've done nothing. Which then is the one from the PAC chair, and I think her commentary is fine. Mine is even clearer. I understand the PAC met with the school executive.
The superintendent, Chris Kennedy, yesterday morning.
Yesterday morning, thank you. Did you go?
I was not able to.
Okay.
Jill is
would
going
you go?
to give me a brief.
Or I mean, would you normally go?
Had I known about it, I definitely would have made.
Okay.
Yeah.
So.
I found it at Santa's breakfast on Sunday, so.
Okay.
In the future, though, I will definitely.
Okay. Then, I'll come back to this again, Jamie.
Okay.
The PAC has met. One of the PAC members was at the Beach Park Committee and said it went well. Don't know what that means. Peter and I were going to meet with Chris Kennedy and Julia Lederman next Tuesday. Is this something you'd like to join? It's lunchtime-ish.
I will not be able to attend. Okay,
that's fine. If I'm going to be meeting with them, I'll make sure you get an invite too.
Okay.
Or over here. They're going to be here. Did you want to do lunch with them here, Peter, or what do we do?
I'm open to suggestions that we can probably figure out.
Why don't we do lunch with them here, and then they can nip up to the school, do their thing. Moving on with this, which I'm going to cover later, unless she's going to disagree with me now. I think what I heard from the PAC and what I think we're going to hear from the school, but we'll flesh that out later, is that a bigger awareness of the school to the community. So I've asked Jamie, and she's agreed to write an awareness article in January. That would be a nod, thank you. And when we do our strategy thing, I think I've got a list of things we could do. So I think Dawn is happy. She's happy that you're going to be the go-to person, and you're likely to be named in about 2 seconds anyhow. Okay, thank you. Next one, which is from our own Lions Bay House Concerts co-founder, and I would defer to the CFO for this.
Okay. I think this.
121?
Yeah. No, that's fine. This was a correspondence that we received from Tamara. She was asking about municipal grants. So I had just wanted to clarify that she actually did not receive a municipal grant last year, but she entered into a partnering agreement because she is considered a business, so the community charter prohibits us giving money to a business. So I think there might have just been a little misunderstanding when she came in asking when the municipal grant applications had gone out, and she seemed concerned she hadn't got one. So again, I was explaining that she doesn't actually qualify for a municipal grant, but the decision about the partnering agreement would have to be made by council in 2019. So I think the plan is for staff just to respond to her accordingly.
Thank you. And so just to put an end to this, so I've told her that it's coming to correspondence, and we're leaving it with staff to contact her. Is that correct? Thank you. And
You can leave it at staff. It'll be a joint effort.
it's the full court press.
It would be a joint letter.
Anybody that didn't go to Mexico will be doing it. Who would that be? Okay. Correspondence, going, gone. Thank you. New business, dear to my own heart. If I can blow through this quickly, please stop me if I'm going too quickly. House on Community Forum, which was A, we moved off. B, discussion re-volunteer week, April 7th to 13th, which I think there's been internal correspondence primarily between Jamie and I. If I look to Councillor Bain, who I know has had the opportunity to go to several of these, my sense is that participation from our volunteers who are dearly valued has been declining, waning, and it seems to become smaller every year. And I think we should put some horsepower to revitalize this. Having said all that, I'm really not sure what I'm talking about. I just want more people to come, because there's lots of volunteers. It seems like we're naming about 20 of them in a minute. And the piece here is that we have more senior volunteers. We have a lot of youngsters, events committee types, and PACs, and on and on and on. And perhaps a more convenient time might be then. So I would open this up to discussion, but having said that, I'm going to ask Jamie plus one of either Neville or Norm that you formulate some ideas for this. Would you accept that assignment?
I accept that assignment.
Good, then. With that assignment, prerogative goes to selection of who your number two would be.
I think I would like to gauge that on the most interested.
Good choice.
Very skillful. Notice how silent Norm is.
I am noting that.
You know what? I just don't want to overcommit myself. I think being on the infrastructure committee and council is really, that's all. I just don't want to make promises I can't keep.
That's enough said, Norm. Neville it is.
Neville it is. All right, but that said, there's a target on you, Norm. Okay, next one.
You better show up.
There you go. Okay, so I would like if you can noodle this for the next month and a half.
Okay.
And you may want to write an article. We can chat about that more, whatever you want to do.
Okay.
So there we go. Anyhow, the idea is to max out our folks, which includes, and I know that staff phones people. If it means the mayor banging on doors, I'm happy to do that. Citizen of the Year, Citizen of Distinction. Neville has accepted that assignment, so our expectation is he will come forward with names and probably, if I'm going to coach him, get something into the village update so our citizens also have a little bit of input on that one too. PAC Liaison, whose hand is up, thank you, Jamie. Historical SOC, I will continue with this. The two remaining pieces are, and this I've circulated this to Jamie, that the mayor's levy, which seems like a term from way long ago, was at one time, I understand, a fairly popular function, usually in the mid-afternoon. A lot of volunteers were there at the one that I quite remember, and it was a pretty full room in Broughton Hall. I don't think we've done one since. I mean, the auspice was this was your chance to meet staff, do your dog licenses and things like that. One of the residents has offered some assistance on this, which I take it is to eyeball the situation and maybe with a counselor to see if this is something we want to take on, pursue it or not. Jamie, I wrote you didn't say yes or no on this one, and you may want to think about it for a bit. And I'm looking at the April being the volunteers thing. I'm trying to work backwards in the calendar of things that our community does. So January, February, don't we do the emergency and police and something like that, kind of in the late winter?
Yeah, there's a EP, or EP week is usually the week that it goes on. I'm not sure what it is for next year though.
It moves around?
It's usually pretty close, I just have a short memory.
What months would you guess?
Somewhere between January and December.
Isn't it May?
You're killing me, Councillor Bain, you really are.
I just heard a voice in my head, I think it's May.
May, okay, good, then that doesn't conflict. Okay, so the mayor's levy, if we're gonna call it that, it could be in, I would think, January, but he's gonna, after Christmas, if we did February for the sake of argument, then we did the thing with volunteers in April, it might be workable. So, Jamie, I'm gonna leave you with that and come back in January with your thoughts.
Okay.
And I'll link you with the lady that had some ideas. Is that
Okay.
fine?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, done. Last one, and I sent this in because I'm not sure if I was the only one that got it, was the 2019 BC Community Achievement Awards, which is the recognition, but the application deadline is January the 15th. I'm thinking, Peter, that unless my council members have got somebody that they really have on their short list that should be put forward and we can assist in getting them their recognition, is this something we might put out to the community where they can put forward folks or solicit our assistance?
I would want to refresh my memory on their materials before.
My understanding is it's on your desk.
Okay.
Along with my BC election stuff, they're phoning me now.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna, I have the email, so I'll send it back to you guys too. So we'll take that off the piece here, and that concludes that, which brings us to public questions and comments. I love that section, except not now. Okay, Mr. Zhang, any questions?
Is it okay if I could set up a meeting with you guys and talk in detail about our concept for the development site we're thinking of?
Let me see. Yes, if I look at this, I know we've got your email. So how about Peter reaches out to you in email and you guys make your arrangements?
That's good.
Is that fine?
Yes.
Good. All right, that being done, so public comments none, there being none, then we're up to the closed council meeting, which means that if you are not council or shouldn't be here, then we're going to ask you to go. Alrighty, thank you very much. And we're going to move to.
Did you note the
Reasons for
time is.
Reasons for closing. Reasons for closing.
Oh, the reason. Okay, so it's 9:08, and the reasons for closing are 91A. Holy smoke, there's a lot. B, C, D, E, F. What is G? I, J, K, L, M, 92, B, and D, which is pretty much everything.
Not quite.
Not quite. All right, can I have the motion to go to closed? Thank you. Second, Jamie. So what I can report out from our strategy session is a variety of appointments, and God, he loves himself. The mayor appoints himself to the Emergency Plan Steering Committee, and on the council perspective, Council Barmayer is appointed to the Beach Park Advisory Committee. Councillor Abbott is appointed to the Curly Stewart Memorial Award Committee, and for staff, if we could give him particulars on that. Happy to advise of resident participation on the Sea to Sky Invasive Species Council Representative, and this is that we will appoint Joanne Ronsley to remain on the Sea to Sky Invasive Species Committee. Anyhow, and should, as she has before, report back to us periodically on matters affecting the village. And Joanne has also been approved to act as our representative to the North Shore Substance Abuse Working Group. And I believe that is all.
Other than having met to discuss strategic planning, and we'll report out
When we do.
when we've got something pulled together to reflect the discussions.
Which will likely be in mid-late January when we're all done-ish.
Okay.
Okay. Motion to adjourn? Thank you. All in favor? Let's not crowd to the door. If you turn the phone off, Mike. Okay, so